Hello. In this digital control systems technology lesson, we are going to be focusing on some of the basics of communication. You may cover many of these topics in various networking related modules, and some which you may have already completed, and some you may be already doing presently, and also in the future semesters. But what we are going to be focusing on in today's lesson is mainly about communication systems in the context of digital control systems, and what are some of the factors that we would consider when we are choosing a particular type of communication versus other when we are building a digital control system environment. So when we think about communication, specifically in control systems domain, there are a number of ways that we can categorize the type of communication that would be happening in these environments. So the very sort of basic level that we would see in such environments is what we can identify as device level or field level communication. So when we say device level or field level communication, what we see here is the type of communication that may be necessary or that may be happening between devices that are at the deployment level. So things like sensors, actuators, and things of that nature, or devices of that nature, and the need for communication in such devices is what we identify as device level or field level communication. So when we take, for example, a plant, for example, their manufacturing plant, for example, anything that is relevant to the lowest level of machinery, controlling the machines, the lowest level controllers. So those are the things that we would identify as device level or field level communication. Then the next type of communication that we would come across is what are called control level communication. So these are the type of communication that would exist between controllers, various control units, computer systems. So these are the things that are going to control the devices at the device level or the field level, and the control systems are the ones that are making decisions. So in a way, when we are building and designing control systems, this is where our control systems would sit, and they may communicate with and control other systems at the device level. So on the very top level, what we would identify is what is known as information level or operational level communication. So with information level or operation level communication, what we have here is these are overall management systems. So these are even beyond the control level systems. These are overall things like industrial automation systems, building automation systems, things like that. And one of the important things that we should note is, even though we would identify these as sort of different levels of communication, what you would see is there is still communication happening across these levels. So, for example, controllers would control the devices at field level. The information and the current status that is gained from the controllers will be communicated back to operations level. Then whatever the decisions that are made at operations level will be translated further down, or information that is collected at the field level may be translated or communicated up. So we will have communication happening across these levels as well. And particularly when we are thinking about industrial systems, one of the important aspects of communication is that we may also come across very specific communication standards. So we may come across certain communication protocols that are specifically used in certain industrial environments. So things like Profinet or Industrial Ethernet, Profibus, Modbus, things like that. These are specific industrial level communication protocols. So again, you may study about basic IP communication, TCP IP communication in your data communication modules, but these are some other type of communication that can also happen in industrial environments. So if we summarize the nature of communication that can happen in control system environments, we can identify them as the type of communication that is happening between controllers and plants. So controllers are the digital control systems and plants are the devices that we are trying to control. Then between controllers and sensors. So whatever the information that is collected from sensors, the signals that our sensors are sensing and collecting that information needs to be fed back to the controllers. And then in certain complex scenarios, some controllers may also talk to other controllers. So particularly if we think about a larger manufacturing plant, there in a manufacturing pipeline, various controllers will have to talk to the controllers at the next level and so on to work together in sync. Then these controllers would also talk to these system managers, monitoring applications, and so on. So again, from the perspective of controllers itself, there are various type of communication that we may have to do. So when we are building these digital control systems, the control system themselves may have to talk to plants. Say for example, if you are controlling a motor, there should be a communication between our controller and the motor. Then if we are having a sensor, a light sensor for example, then there is some communication happening between the light sensor and the control system that we are building. Then if we are interconnected with a larger system environment, our controller may have to talk to another controller to integrate, sync in, operate in a synced manner. Then again in a larger sort of a deployment environment, when various controllers are doing various things, again all of those things may have to be managed from a centralized point of view. Then these controllers may have to feed their information back into the system managers, monitors, and things like that. So again, we would identify a variety of communication necessities, variety of instances where we may have to do data communication when we are building control systems. So now if we go back to the basics of communication, there are a few different ways that we can identify or categorize the type of communication that we can use. So this is in terms of how we can go about establishing the type of communication that we want to have. Say for example, if we have a number of entities A, B, C, and D. So these are the entities that we have. And the point of point-to-point communication is that if A wants to communicate to B, there is a direct connection. If it wants to communicate with C, there's a direct connection. To D, there's a direct connection. Likewise, each of the entities will have to be directly connected to each other. So that is what we would identify as point-to-point network. Each node is connected to every other node. So in many ways, this is one of the simplest ways of building networks. It is very simple, and because these are direct connections, we can also see them as more reliable. But one of the disadvantages is that it can be pretty costly because we need a lot of connections. But there are certain situations like when we are building certain real-time systems where direct connection or dedicated link is necessary, it would be beneficial. We may go for that. But in other scenarios, using point-to-point networks could be costly and most likely they may be discouraged. On the other hand, what we can have is, say, we can have a similar set of nodes, but now what we can have is we can use what is called a shared media network. So when we talk about a shared media network, what we have is we will have a shared media that is shared by all the nodes, and within a shared media network, each of the node will connect to the shared medium and communicate through that. So the nodes are connected through what is called a common bus. So we would be connecting through a common bus, or other topologies are possible as well. And the main sort of advantage is it will have less wiring, and comparatively it would be cheaper, particularly when we are thinking about a larger number of nodes, because shared medium would be considerably cheaper there. And if we want to keep on adding more nodes, again, this would be fairly cheaper. So we just need to extend the node and we just keep on adding any number of nodes to the shared medium. Whereas in the case of a point-to-point node, we may have to keep on, say, if we have another node to connect, now we may have to connect that to every other nodes and so on, which would become pretty cumbersome there. But one of the disadvantages that we would see with shared medium networks is that we would have to use some form of complex network protocol, because when we were using a direct connection, it is just a direct connection we had and we were able to communicate through that. So there's no because that line is only for communicating between A and B. But now if we need to communicate between A and B, it needs to come from A to this common shared channel and then again go back to B. So the point that this channel is shared with others, so now we need to have certain network protocols managing who is using the shared medium at what point in time and so on. So in terms of the type of networks that we can have, this is one of the ways that we can categorize them. That is, whether we are having a point-to-point network, a directly connected network where each node is interconnected, or we are using a shared media network where nodes are connected through a shared media. Another aspect of communication protocols that we would be very much interested in when we are building control system is when these systems communicate. So the previous categorization is about how they are going to communicate, whether they have direct link or a shared link. That is how they are going to communicate. But another way that we can think about this communication is when they are going to communicate. So there would be certain systems that would only need to communicate when something happens. For example, if user presses a button, then that button press information will have to be communicated. Or if an alarm goes on, then that information might have to be communicated. If a new information is needed, that can be requested when that is needed. So these type of communication, we would identify that as event-based communication. So that is when communication happens only when something is needed, when something is happening, an event is happening. The advantage with this approach is we only use the network resources when we need it. So if we need the network resource, then we will use it. Otherwise, we are not going to use the network. But on the other hand, because these are event-based communication, we need to use it when we want to use it. So say for example, if there is an alarm or some fault is detected in one part of the system, that needs to be communicated back to the controller immediately. So that is an event-based communication. A fault is detected, that is communicated, but that needs to be communicated without a miss. So here we may need a high reliability of the communication medium. So it is the efficient use is there, but we also need higher reliability in terms of the communication, because the event only happens once, most likely. So then at that point in time, the communication also should happen. And because we cannot miss that communication happening, we may also use the concept of acknowledgement. So, for example, in this case, what we would have is, say, let's take the two entities A and B that are trying to communicate. So what we would have here is A may send a message to B, and A would expect B to say an acknowledgement there. So an acknowledgement is received back from B. So A is sending a message, then it is receiving an acknowledgement back. Then only it will assume that communication has happened. Because if, for example, for some reason A didn't receive the message, then it will also not be, rather B did not receive the message, B will also not send back a acknowledgement. So then what A can do is A can retry again and retry to send the message again. So A can retry again. If that fails, again it can keep on retrying, and when it is receiving an acknowledgement, then it will take that as a successful communication. The other type of communication that we would come across is what we would identify as state-based communication. So the main difference here is, in event-based communication, the communication happens only when there's some new information. Whereas in state-based information, messages are sent at a predefined regular intervals. So they are sent at regular intervals. So for example, in the case of a sensor reading, a temperature sensor reading, every minute a temperature sensor reading is received, and then that is sent back to the controller. So from a network usage point of view, it can be less efficient because it is using the network quite often to send messages a lot, even when there's no change. Say, for example, at a particular point in time, when the first message was sent, the temperature was 30. Then after 1 minute, the temperature is still 30, but it will again send a new message. Then even if the temperature doesn't change for a while, it will keep on sending that message. So for that reason, we could identify the network usage as being less efficient there. But on the other hand, one of the advantages with this approach is, here the communication can be more tolerant for even if a communication fails. Say, for example, let's take the same set of nodes that are communicating here. Let's say A sends a message to B, but it was not received. But A doesn't have to send it again, because these are the type of messages that are going to be sent regularly again. So the next minute it may be sent again. So A can keep on sending in the same regular interval. Even if B misses one or two of those messages, it is still not a big problem, because these are not critical information in that nature, as with event-based communication, because there's always another set of information that is coming after that. So these two things we will significantly think about when we are thinking about the type of communication that we want to use in building our digital control systems. So when we think about a control system, whether for a particular type of communication, whether we need an event-based communication or state-based communication. So even when we just think about communication between a sensor and a controller, depending on what the sensor is sensing, we may have to use event-based communication or state-based communication. So as the example of a temperature sensor, it may be okay depending on the type of application in certain situations. Like, say, for example, in an air conditioner, if the temperature reading is lost for 1 minute, is not a big problem. Whereas if the temperature sensor is used to detect a manufacturing fault, for example, something should not be going beyond a temperature level, and then when the temperature sends a value beyond a particular level, then at that stage we may need an event based communication, because there it is a critical event that we are trying to communicate there. So depending on what we are intending to communicate, whether it is a one time event that we want to communicate, or whether it is a regular message that we would send, and even if it is lost once, it is okay. We may go with event based communication, where we may also use acknowledgements so that confirming the message is received, or we may go with state based communication, where acknowledgement is not normally needed. Now let's think about some of the basic principles of communication, not just in the context of digital control systems, but in general basic communication principles when we think about interconnecting control systems. So the type of communication, again, we can categorize them into a number of ways in terms of how this communication, how the overall communication methods are going to function. So we can categorize under the characteristics of whether they are simplex, duplex, or semi-duplex connections, whether they are serial or parallel connections, and if they are serial, then whether they are synchronous or asynchronous connections, and what is the notion of data throughput and how it would be relevant in choosing a particular communication method. So these are some of the things that we will consider when we are trying to use a particular type of communication method. So one of the first things that we will identify with a particular communication method is the directionality of the communication. So let's say we have a communication channel here. In that communication channel, if we can only communicate in one direction, so the communication can happen only in one direction. So if the communication can happen only in one direction, we will identify that as a simplex communication. So simplex is basically when we have a communication channel, communication can happen only in one direction. So in this case, between A and B, communication can only happen A to B. Then the second category of communication is we can identify as half duplex systems. And with half duplex, what we have is we can communicate in both directions, but only one direction of communication is allowed at a time. Say, if you are sending in this direction from A to B, then the reverse cannot happen. If this is happening, this cannot happen. If this is not happening, then we can have the other one. So only one direction of communication at a point in time. Then the third category of communication is what we would identify as full duplex. So going by the names here, we can communicate in both directions. So A can communicate, send something to B at the same time. B can also send something to A. In both directions, the communication can happen at the same time. So this is the way that we can categorize communication methods using the directionality of the communication. If it is only one direction, it is simplex. One direction at a time, it is half duplex, and both directions, it is full duplex. So now when we think about using and choosing a particular communication method, it may seem like simplex is not that great because it can only send message in one direction. But the point to remember is we don't always need a full duplex connection when we are building a control system. In many cases, a sensor may be sending some updates to a controller and only one direction of data transfer is needed because if we don't need to send an acknowledgement back, a single direction of communication is good enough. So in that case, we may choose a simplex communication when we are communicating with a sensor and a controller. So it doesn't always mean full duplex is good and we would always use full duplex. There are times when we may also choose to use simplex because that is good enough for our need. That is what we need, only one direction of communication. And it will have other advantages of consuming less power, maybe taking less space. So there could be other advantages as well when we go with a simpler approach there. So the main reason to know about these things is depending on what we need in our communication system, in our control system, what is the communication need there, then only we can choose a appropriate communication method there. So that is how we would go about deciding what is the communication method to use in a particular control system environment. Another way that we would classify or categorize data communication is based on whether we are using parallel communication or serial communication. So, and under serial communication, again, we will look at synchronous and asynchronous communication. So, when we talk about parallel communication, what we have is, say, if we want to do a 8-bit communication. So we have a 8-bit communication is what we want to do. So in that case, in a parallel communication environment, what we would have is 8 parallel wires taking each of the bits at the same time. So we will have 8 wires connecting both ends of the system. Say we have a sensor and a controller that is trying to communicate. So let's assume this is a communication between a sensor and a controller. And if we are using parallel communication, then we would use the number of wires that we need for the number of bits. So we may use an 8-bit parallel communication, 16-bit, or any more number of wires is possible there. So the main advantage of using parallel communication is it would be very fast, because at the same time it takes to communicate 1 bit, we can also communicate the n number of bits that we have, the number of wires. But so it can be fast, it can be very straightforward, there's no complex protocols are needed, it will be relatively easy to implement. But one of the main disadvantages is it will need many more input lines. We would need a lot of input lines. Say, for example, from 8 to say if we start with an 8-bit system and then we want to go to 16-bit, we need to double the number of wires we have. If we want to go to 32, then we again need to double that number of wires. So that would be one of the main disadvantages there. But given it can communicate directly all the bits at the same time, we would get high data throughput over short distances. So it's not going to be high data throughput all the time, but because with long distances it would be very disadvantageous. Having long bulky cables, it will be very costly and all. But with short distances, it is a good approach to use parallel communication. So one of the most common places where we may come across parallel communication is when we are connecting devices within the same IC, for example, within the chipset itself or on a circuit board itself. So when we are closer inside the system itself, we may go for more parallel communication, and more of the external communication, we may go with serial communication. So the main sort of advantage with parallel communication is it will give us very high data throughput there. So with serial communication, the main point is if we are communicating the same 8 bits here, we'll have to send the 8 bits one after the other in series, and they will be sent and received one after the other. So it is sent like a stream of data. So one of the main advantages, these interfaces can operate in very less bulkier setups. We can even do it in a one wire system. the main disadvantages is it won't be as fast as a parallel communication that we can have. But when we think about communication over long distances, we can still build these to be fairly higher throughput systems, because using a parallel communication over such long distances would be impractical. So given these are cheaper and less bulky, as I said, we may use serial communication when we are talking about communication out of our control systems. So any communication inside the control systems, the components that are part of the control system, we may connect them using parallel most likely, and the external communications we may opt for serial communication most of the time. Again, these are not like rules that we should use this or the other, but that is what more feasible in a realistic manner. So when it comes to serial communication, another problem that we would have is, say, because we are sending a stream of bits one after the other. So then how do we identify when the stream starts and ends? That is one of the challenges that we would have. And with synchronous serial transfer, what we would have is we will have a continuous stream of bits, and we would know when the stream starts and ends based on that. The alternative is known as asynchronous serial transfer. Here we can have bursts of data transfer, so we can have different points where they are communicating the serial bits, but we should also use additional start bit and end bit to identify when the data transmission is starting and ending. So that is another way of establishing serial communications, either synchronous or asynchronous communications. So, as I said, there are a number of main advantages as to why we would use serial communication over parallel communication when we are building our digital control systems. One of the main advantages is serial communication requires only few interconnecting wires or cables. So then it doesn't take a lot of space. When we don't have a lot of wires, then also it has the advantages of not being suffering from crosstalk or interference, magnetic interference and things like that. So those things are also not there. So when we think about connecting something over long distances, particularly when we have a sensor that needs to be located much farther away from the controller and things like that, we may choose to use serial communication because it is advantageous in long distance communication. One of the other reasons why we may go for serial communication is particularly when we are building these systems. Cost is one of the significant factors that we will have to consider when we are building systems, and serial is obviously cheaper because it doesn't require a lot of components, less wires and less things, so it would be cheaper there. So again, when we want to connect many devices to various sensors and things like that, serial would be a much cheaper option as an overall cost point of view as well. So these are some of the common reasons why we may go for serial communication over parallel communication in most of our digital control systems. But as I said, there can be certain instances where we can and would use parallel communication. It doesn't mean we will not use parallel communication, but in most scenarios, serial will have the advantage in terms of when comparing with parallel communication. So when we think about serial communication itself, there are a number of communication protocols that you would come across, particularly thinking about digital control systems. And many of the sensors, many of the transducers, and many of the other digital components that you would come across where you may need to interconnect to, they may use some form of serial communication. So even when you are building projects using Arduino based systems and all, You may come across things like UART or Universal Asynchronous Receiver Transmitter, SPI, I2C, CAN bus or controller area networks, USB, again, the same USB, but can also be used in control system environments. And one of the interesting ones is what is called a one-wire protocol, which is, as the name suggests, just one wire. They are for communication. So there are various different serial communication protocols that you may come across, and you will have to think about, for example, if you are building something using Arduino, an Arduino board may support some of these communication protocols. Then if you are choosing a particular sensor, then you have to think whether that sensor also can communicate using one of these serial communication protocols. Then you can connect them and have a successful communication between those devices. So that is the point of thinking about these communication protocols. You may explore about these much more through some reading and on research, and identify what are sort of the common protocols these days, what are the sensors, and particularly from the context of the projects that you are doing, think about what are the components that you are using, what are the communication protocols necessary there, and so on. So that is something that I would suggest that you do as your own sort of homework, self-study activity. Then one of the other interesting things that we would come across these days, particularly in building many sort of systems, is that we could also use various wireless communication methods. So wired communication methods are one thing, and we may use them as well, but also in certain situations wireless may have a lot of advantages as well, because say we don't have to have the infrastructure interconnecting these things. So if we are deploying a sensor network, for example, if we use a wireless sensor network, then sensors can talk one another without any direct connection, so we can deploy them in a much wider area without needing to lay wires and things like that. So that is one of the reasons why wireless communication may have certain advantages when it comes to certain type of digital control systems. So again, depending on the type of systems, you will have to think about what is the suitable wireless communication method that you can choose and use. So when we talk about wireless communication, they can be again categorized into few different ways. Things like sort of optical or infrared communication. So these are either infrared, sometimes even visible light can be used to communicate as a basic communication channel. So you may find these in remote controllers and things like that. IR remotes are very commonplace. But one of the main disadvantages with IR or even visible light communication is that you need line of sight and limited range. So those are some of the disadvantages there. But one of the most common type of wireless communication that we would use are radio frequency communications or electromagnetic wave frequency communication. So this is where we would transmit and receive from a transmitter and a receiver. So things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all these things would come under the category of radio frequency, or even things like FM, AM, all these radio frequency transmissions would come under this category as well. We will discuss briefly about radio frequency transmissions in a while, and also then some of you may also study about this in later modules as well. And one of the other things to remember when we think about communication is the fact that any communication method that we would use will have some level of error introduced into the communication. So then we will have to use certain approaches to do both error detection and also error correction. So again, we will not be going into detail of these things in this course. You may study about those things in a data communications networking course. But the thing you need to remember is different protocols may implement different error detection and error correction mechanisms. And when you are building your digital control systems, and depending on where you are deploying these systems, you may have to think about what are some of the error detection mechanisms that you can include or you can implement, what are some of the error corrections mechanism you can include, and how that can benefit the overall system performance. So here the main reason and why this is reminded here is that you need to think about this when you are interconnecting systems from a digital control systems point of view, because any communication medium can introduce errors. So it is a good idea to have some mechanisms to detecting and, if possible, correcting them. So there are things, approaches in terms of identifying how we can identify a single bit error or multiple bit errors, things in the nature of parity bits, checksums, and so on. So you may study about these things in much more detail in data communication networking courses. So now we will look at some of the basics of radio communication or wireless communication, particularly radio communication. So what we mainly do with radio communication is, so what we essentially do with any communication is, we want to send some information. So we want to send some information, and then the other side is going to receive that information. So then we will have that original message that we want to send. Then that message will have to be encoded into a particular format so that it can be sent over a particular carrier medium. Then, depending on the type of communication that we are using, it will be carried over that carrier medium. And then at the other end, it will be again decoded back, and we can get the message out of that. So that is the very basic idea of communication. So this is the same thing that we will try to do with radio communication as well, where the medium being the radio part of it. So the radio waves will become the medium through which this communication is going to happen. So when you think about radio waves particularly, so you may remember electromagnetic waves from physics, for example. So you may know electromagnetic waves where we have starting from short waves, sort of submarine communication waves, to visible light, infrared light, ultraviolet light, X-rays, gamma rays. So all of these things are in the spectrum of electromagnetic waves. So basic idea of electromagnetic waves is energy that is being carried over the atmosphere, the molecules that compress and depress, and by that they form waveforms that can be carried over through atmosphere. So in a waveform like that, there are few concepts that you will come across. Again, things that you may have already covered in modules like physics and so on. So what we have here is the high point of the wave. We would identify them as the crest of waves, and then we would identify the low points of the waves as troughs of the waves. So in a way, if we try to match that with the compression and depression of the molecules, when they are closely compressed, that is the high point, and when they are sparsely compressed, that is the low point. And say then again, if they are compressed highly again, so that is again the next high point. So that is the nature of waves that we would come across. So now what we would try to do is, we would try to use some of these properties of these radio waves and try to use that as a medium for communication and try to put through our message or information over that waveform. So we will additionally use the concepts of frequency, so that is the amount of cycles that we have within a second, and the amplitudes, that is the amplitude of the waves, and also the wavelength. So these are some of the additional properties that we would use when we are considering a radio wave based communication. Then one of the other things that we need to remember is the radio waves can travel or propagate to different distances depending on their frequencies. So if they are very low frequency, for example, something like 300 kilohertz to 3 megahertz, they can travel along the Earth's surface, for example, over long distance. So this is where we would have things like shortwave radios and things like that. So they communicate or they travel along the curve of the curvature of the Earth, and this is where we have the shortwave radio and things like that in communication. So shortwave radio is something that you may or may not have come across, but this is what that is. Then slightly higher frequencies like 3 megahertz to 30 megahertz, these can communicate or these can propagate by bouncing over the Earth's atmosphere. So again, they can also travel over long distances but bouncing over the atmosphere of the Earth. So these are what we would identify as higher short waves. But other type of radio waves such as UHF, VHF and others, they would need some form of line of sight. Some of them may go through different mediums, different objects, different materials, but still would need some level of line of sight there. So things like satellite communication, television broadcast and things like that, we may need to have some form of line of sight there. Then another concept that we may come across with particularly radio wave communication, and particularly when we are using things that need line of sight, we may use things such as repeaters. So these two parties cannot communicate directly because they don't have line of sight. But if they have a common tower that is in line of sight to both entities, now both of them can communicate. So again, why this is important from a digital control system point of view is, depending on the environment where you are deploying these things, depending on how far the communication needs to happen, what are the other restrictions that you have in that environment, you may have to think about these other infrastructure problems when you are choosing a particular communication method, a particular wireless communication method, radio wave based communication method. So one of the ways that we send information over a radio wave is using what is called modulation. So the idea of modulation is we would have what is called a carrier wave. So the carrier wave, the idea behind a carrier wave is that it is something that is already available. So that is the medium that we are going to use. The carrier wave is the medium that we are going to use. So normally a carrier wave would be a pure wave of constant frequency, like a sine wave. So that is what we would use as a carrier wave. Then the information that we want to take is the input wave, or the modulating wave is, for example, speech. So if we want to take speech as the information that we want to take, that is the information, the signal that we want to take. That doesn't have to be a constant or a similar to the carrier wave. It can be anything. So now what we do in terms of modulation is, if we can combine these two waves and send it over a medium, that is what we call as modulation. So we combine these two waves, the carrier wave and the input signal, into producing a modulated signal, a modulated wave. So now the question is, why do we need to modulate these waves? Why can't we just send the input wave itself? So in this case, we have an input wave. Why can't we just send this? And the main reason why we can't is the frequency problem. So what we have seen here is when the frequency is when the frequency is lower, we will not be able to, that information will not be able to travel over long distances. When it is of a higher frequency, then it can travel over long distances without attenuation, without losing power. So for that reason, we would not be able to send the waves as themselves at very low frequencies, because without carrier waves, we cannot send them over long distances. So what we may have to do is we may have to do some amplification, we may have to do some modulation, so modulate them with some higher frequency waves so they can travel over long distances, and they have a fairly higher power as well. In terms of the transmission, we can amplify and transmit them so that they can go over long distances. So these are some of the things that you will, as I said, will discuss in various other networking and communication modules. So in this case, we are just briefly touching upon these topics as an introduction from a control systems point of view. So when it comes to modulation, there are a few different ways that we can do modulation. We can do amplitude modulation, or what is known as AM waves, or AM amplitude modulation, or frequency modulation, or FM, or phase modulation. So these are using different properties of the carrier wave, and we introduce the modulated signal into the carrier wave using these different mechanisms. So let's look at these with some examples. So in the case of amplitude wave, what we do is we change so we have the input wave. So what we do is we take the carrier wave and match the amplitude of the carrier wave as with the input wave. So what we have here is the carrier wave is transformed into having amplitudes changing as how it was with the modulating wave or the input wave. So the height of the wave is what we are trying to modulate here or change here. So then this is what would be transmitted there. This modulated one is the one that would be transmitted there. So that is how we are combining in amplitude modulation. In frequency modulation, what we have is, again, we have the input wave, but we are changing the frequency. So when it is a high point in the input wave, we have more frequency here. When it is the trough or the low point in the wave, we have less frequency there. So we change the frequency of the carrier wave. So when we are combining these two, the amplitude is not changed, amplitude remains same, but we are changing the frequency here. So this is another way of carrying the input signal over the carrier signal. Then when it comes to digital signals are going to be these square waves of ones and zeros. Again, we can modulate them in something similar to a frequency modulated manner, for example. So again, ones would be high frequency, lows would be less frequency, and ones would be again high frequency. So again, we can modulate digital signals also in this manner. So this is something of interest. You may actually do these things when you are building certain communication systems. You may have to do some digital modulation and demodulation and things like that. So this is just as an introduction to understand those things. So if you look at an overall transmission and receiving example, in the case of an FM transmission, for example, what we may have is we may start with a microphone. So that is where we would start. The microphone would produce a sound signal that can be processed in an audio processor. And at the same time, we would also use a carrier frequency generator. So this carrier frequency generator is then going to take, or both of these things can be combined to produce the transmission signal. Then that can be amplified and things like that. Various amplifiers can be used, and then various other transmission amplifiers and things like that will be there as well before it is sent to a transmission tower. So then whatever the signal that is transmitted is a high power signal. So we start with a very low power signal, and after a number of amplification cycles, we end up with a high power signal that we are transmitting. So now, once we receive that signal back at a receiver end, what we will have to do is we will receive the signal here, and at that point, we will also introduce the carrier frequency generator, or the carrier signal generator. And by combining the carrier signal generator and the received signal, we may be able to extract the original signal that we transmitted. And then again, we may go through a number of signal processing cycles and finally end up with the original signal that we had. So this is a general overall signal transformation cycle that you would have in data transmission and receiving, in this case considering sound signal over FM transmission. Then one of the other things that you may come across when you are talking about radio signals and radio spectrum is what is known as channel spacing. So that is, you may have heard about this when talking about mobile communication, 4G, LTE, 5G, and all these things, where you may have heard words like wideband, narrowband, ultra narrowband, and things like that. So the idea here is, if we have a range of frequency, say we have 1000 to 2000, if that is the frequency range that we have, or then what we can see here is we can divide that into a number of frequency ranges. So we can divide that into 10 subgroups, or we can divide that into 5, or any number of subgroups that we can divide. So then what that means is, if we divide that into more groups, more chunks, more number of people can communicate. Here it can be 20, 10, or 5 communications can happen. So with a wide band, what we have is 25 kilohertz for each channel. With narrow band, it's 12.5, and ultra narrow band, it's 6.25. So the idea is, if, say, for example, a particular communication, say radio communication, needs to happen over between, say, 100 and 200. Now the question is how we can divide this into how many channels, so how many parallel communications that we can have. So this here, the channel spacing idea is about, within a given radio spectrum, how many parallel communication channels that we can have. So similar to having number of different wires communicating in parallel, this is channel spacing about how many parallel radio communications that we can have. And another thing that you may come across is known as multiple access, things like FDMA and TDMA. So these are frequency division multiple access and time division multiple access. So again, frequency division is what we looked so far. So that is, say, if we have a frequency range, we divide the frequency spectrum into a number of ranges. So each of these can be independently used for different communication channels. Then time division, or TDMA, is like the same frequency channel can be used after, say, first second for one channel, seconds for another communication. Likewise, we can switch between, alternate between the different communication. And then there are approaches combining both of these as well. So what we have discussed today in terms of communication is some of the basics that you may need when it comes to using communication systems in building digital control systems. So the thing to remember is we may use wired or wireless communication, and particularly when we are using wired communication, the most of the communication protocols that we may come across are serial communication protocols. And depending on the devices, components that we may want to interface with our control systems, we have to think about what communication protocols those devices support and how we can implement them. And another thing to remember is, in certain situations, in certain scenarios, wireless communication may be an approach, may be a suitable approach, particularly with larger sensor networks and things like that. Where laying cables may be disadvantageous, so we may go with wireless communication approaches. So in that case, we may have to think about what type of wireless communication is suited for our requirements. So as I said, you may study about these things in much more detail in later data communication courses. So that's all for today, and thanks for joining in. See you next time. Bye.